piace molto l'Italia. I love Italy. I always have. Maybe because Italy was the first country I visited as a young man. Or maybe because at 25, one just cannot not love this beautiful country. So in my impressionable age, I lived for over a year in ancient Rome. This is how it felt to live on one of the streets of Rome Subura, just 300 yards away from the Forum.
So most of you are familiar with Italy. This particular trip is focused on southern Italy and Sicily. Italy now is flooded with tourists at archaeological sites, known either because of elementary history books or because our popular culture is full of gladiators and nasty Roman emperors.
Our goal for this month-long trip is to have a lot of fun while hugging some good-looking ancient stones along the way. We'll try to capture the feeling just some of the places we'll visit.
So what does it feel like around ancient ruins this summer? We will enjoy spectacular scenery, eat some wonderful Italian food, but also in the scorching heat, carrying heavy backpacks, trek up and down mountains and across hectares and hectares of Greek and Roman temples, beautiful, heroic, and majestic.
A lot has changed since our last visit to Rome 10 years ago. Much more was dug out, and the number of tourists increased exponentially. I would like to introduce you to some of my favorite places in Rome. We will do it from an area with a bird's view of the ancient city. And to get there, we will start in the Forum. When one can see the Forum Romanum with fewer people very early in the morning, it is magical. It induces you with the feeling of eternity and classical elegance. Walking in the Forum towards Colosseum, we pass the Roman Senate building. Then, halfway through, we turn right and walk south up one of the 7 Roman hills. We end up on the Palatine Hill, where well-to-do folks in Republican times built their houses, and where later the dreaded emperors had their homes. This is the view of the imperial palaces on the hill from the Circus Maximus below. And these are the ruins of the imperial palaces at the top. We can only imagine how it looked then. We then turn around and face Circus Maximus. We now see the southern part of the ancient Rome. The grassy field in the middle of the circus is where Romans walk their dogs, and in the summer afternoons, young couples like to picnic at the place where the ancients raced their chariots. Still on Palatine, we now move to the western edge of the hill. Talking about the bird's view, to our right we see Capitoline Hill and the chariots on the top of the national monument on Piazza Venezia. To the left is Forum Boarium, ancient Rome's meat market, with Rome's 2 oldest surviving temples, Hercules Victor and Portimus. Also to the left, in the distance, we see several bridges connecting ancient Rome to the medieval streets of Trastevere. Rome Subura was a very poor neighborhood in ancient times. Historians tell us that Caesar was born in Subura. 40 years ago, it was a sleepy place with mom-and-pop grocery stores and small hostels. Over the years, Subura was converted into a desired swanky place to live for young, well-to-do Romans. But in many ways, it remains the same. If one would like to get a feeling for Rome's old neighborhoods, a hotel in Subura with its rooftop breakfast patios is a very good place to take in the smell and taste of old and new Rome. Being on the roof, one can also see that the local redistribution of wealth does not include free TV cable in Rome. Here, antennae reign. In the past, when Romans went out to eat, they often dined at a restaurant in Trastevere, across the Tiber. Nowadays, with the increase in the number of tourists, the food is not as diverse, but one can still find a nice, modest restaurant with excellent seafood, vegetables, pasta, and a good glass of house vino.
Leaving Rome in a very small manual transmission car from Hertz, we head down the coast through Latium. We're staying at the Seaside Family Hotel in Terracina. From there, we will take day trips to the ancient city of Minturnae and to the villa of Tiberius in Sperlonga. First, Minturnae. This archaeological site is difficult to find, in spite of the iPhone GPS and the fact that we know where we are in general. After 2 U-turns in 30 minutes, we seem unable to find the place. We're into our third U-turn when we see local fishermen on the river to the right of the road. Using James's elementary Italian and their patience, we're now managing to find the well-hidden entrance with a barely visible sign. We are inside Minturnae. In Roman times, it used to be an important commercial port on the river 3 miles inland. After buying tickets from one government employee and then handing them to another right next to him, we are walking into a well-preserved and restored theater. Not a tourista in sight. As I walk up, I imagine following in the steps of Italian ladies mounting to their seats. The place is still used for concerts today. Enjoying our solitude, we're stepping out behind a theater among marble pillars that had held temples to various gods.
Next, we are going to see an ancient villa on the Tyrrhenian Sea. The place was surrounded by several pools of exotic fish, which the owner raised for the entertainment of his guests. The pools and the fish, maybe not as exotic, are still here, and since it's all bordering the seashore, the site is visually very appealing. Tiberius, Augustus' adopted son and the second Roman emperor, frequented this villa, which is now bearing his name. The amazing Hellenistic sculptures, which once ornamented the grotto, were found here, and they are now in the museum on the site. Other than us, there are only a few other people at the grotto.
Hotel Anna, where we're staying in Terracina, bears the name of the family's great-grandmother. The entire family works with the guests. They're wonderful people, providing a very nice Italian home atmosphere. The family also has a very friendly but not extremely good-looking dog, which they nevertheless call Brad Pitt. Go figure.
Continuing south on Via Appia, we are going to visit several towns in Italian Campania, and the first on the list is Kapa. Kapa, founded around 600 BC, was one of Rome's largest cities. Arriving there, we stopped by the Arco di Andriano, once faced with limestone. In ancient times, it spanned Via Appia and was one of the city entrances. Next, we enter the second largest amphitheater in the Roman world, which is only slightly smaller than the Colosseum, but much more accessible. The seating area here is not as restored as the one in Minturnae, but we're able to walk down to the supporting rooms and tunnels underneath the arena. They are completely dug out and fairly well preserved. Again, we're very lucky to be one of the few visitors here. And since it's also a stone-hugging trip, Maria is insisting on the actual demonstration. Look at this beauty! For a hugger of ancient stones, it rarely gets any better.
It is interesting to discover the level of acoustic design of a 2,000-year-old theater. Here in the amphitheater in Capua, I'm sharing my impressions from one end of the theater while James is filming me from the other end from over 80 yards away. We're in Capua and we are in probably the second largest amphitheater from the ancient Roman times. Even without most of its upper structure, the design of the amphitheater protects the internal sound from the noise of the modern city outside. From Capua we drive to Napoli, or Naples as we know it. If Capua was one of the largest cities in ancient Rome, today Campania's Naples is the third largest in Italy. With some very fancy Neapolitan driving, James manages to get us to the hotel without a scratch. This is the point where I make a mental note that there is absolutely no way we will finish our trip without crashing or at least scraping our car. We unloaded our luggage at the hotel, dropped our little car at Hertz, and we're now walking back to our hotel through the center of the city. Some parts of this interesting city look neglected or hollowed out, while others are exquisite. It is the next day and we're spending it at the Naples National Archaeological Museum, which among other things houses most of the finds from Pompeii and the other towns around Vesuvius. It's incredible to walk among 2,000-year-old marble statues of emperors, philosophers, and Greek gods. Standing next to Caesar in his full war regalia is impressive. All the best mosaics and frescoes from Pompeii and other areas have been brought to this museum, but there's no air conditioning in the place. After speaking to people working at the info center, we still cannot ascertain whether the absence of AC is good or bad for the artifacts. But we are finding out that to preserve the mosaics and frescoes, entire walls, bricks and all, were cut out from the rooms, lowered onto large platforms, and then transported to Naples Museum. When we arrived in Naples, we had a small challenge. Since we elected not to stay at high-end hotels and only had 2 small suitcases and backpacks with equipment, after a week in Italy, we had to find a laundry shop. A taxi driver named Salvatore was helping us in this endeavor. We did not succeed. It turns out that in Naples one can easily find dry cleaning service, but not a laundry service. The washing one can only do at the self-service, coin-operated shops. Through this interesting experience we befriended Salvatore.
Che bella giornata che oggi! È una bellissima giornata! Ho avuto il piacere di conoscere due belle persone. A queste 2 persone l'ho fatto anche la lavanderia.
So, when the next day we had to visit 5 archaeological sites, we asked Salvatore to take us there.
First, let us look at the map of the area. There are 2 gulfs here, smaller Gulf of Pozzuoli and a larger one, Gulf of Naples. One can see why the area around here was so important in Roman times. It has excellent natural harbors. One of them was used as a port at Puteoli for Egyptian grain feeding Italy. The other was a naval base at Misenum. The Mediterranean climate and the beautiful coastline attracted many wealthy vacationers. The Roman name for Pozzuoli was Puteoli. It is from Latin puteo, to stink, referring to the sulfuric smell in the area. This is because the town lies in the center of a volcanic caldera called Campi Flegrei, which Salvatore insisted we visit. Bai, now lying mostly underwater, was a fashionable coastal resort and the site of summer villas of Julius Caesar, Nero, and Hadrian, who died there. Also at Bai was a hot spring complex. It included the largest dome before the construction of the Roman Pantheon. Someone said that it was the Hamptons, Beverly Hills, or perhaps Palm Springs of the ancient world. From the hills above Bai, we see that the best view of Vesuvius and the towns at the foot of the mountain is from the other hill, the one in Misenum. After a little scouting, we found a good spot on that hill. In 79 AD, the author and naturalist Pliny the Elder was in charge of the Roman fleet at the naval base in Misenum. When Vesuvius erupted, he went by ship towards the coast to help rescue people, but ended up reaching point to the south of the mountain, where he died. His nephew, Pliny the Younger, later wrote an account of the eruption, as he probably watched it from this hill. Today is hazy, but in a clear day, one would see the extent of the disaster from this point. There, across the two gulfs between the coast and the volcano, is the famous archaeological site of Pompeii. Our last site around Puzzoli is the Flavian Amphitheater, the third largest after Colosseum and Kapos. They are all elegant structures, which leaves lasting impression of beauty and function. What is perhaps less known or described are the areas below the amphitheater arena. It was amazing to see the well-organized supporting corridors and areas and to walk through those hallways, which are actually 2 or 3 levels down below. Some of these areas contain hoisting apparatus that could raise different stage structures into the arena openings to the amazement of the spectators. So this is the lowest floor there, and there is a little higher floor, and then of course there's the arena, and there's this beautiful pathways. We are happy to take you along with us for this beautiful trip. We are very, very excited. It's beyond exciting.
Most people visiting excavated towns around Mount Vesuvius are on day trips from Naples. But since we plan to stay in Sorrento at the southern end of the Gulf of Naples, we decided to take our day trips from this much smaller town. There's a local train running between Naples and Sorrento, which stops at every town at the base of Vesuvius. The train line is called Circumvesuviana. It's a mix between a streetcar and a commuter train. So, after dropping our belongings at the hotel in Sorrento, we're using this train to hop from one excavation site to another while taking in some of the local flavor. We're in Pompeii, which together with other towns around Mount Vesuvius was buried under lava and ash when the mountain erupted. After walking street after street while fighting throngs of tourists, we are getting somewhat disappointed. We had expected to see some of the famous restored houses. That was not possible. We're unlucky. Most of them today are cordoned off from the visitors. These are the photos of the houses taken when they were open to tourists. We're getting a sense of what it must have been like to live in this fairly large town, home to over 20,000 people. Herculaneum is a smaller town than Pompeii. There's less of a crowd on its streets now. The most interesting houses are still roped off, but we're stopping by the house of a surgeon.
He didn't have any good tools because he graduated from vet school. So he just used the knife to slice the guy out, pull some of the stuff out of him. The guy was very stoic. Probably belonged to a Stoic philosophy school.
This is a real find for us. It's a well-preserved Roman villa in Oplontis, 33 feet below the modern street level. This residential complex, historians believe, belonged to Nero's wife, Poppaea Sabina. This is an actual house with walls, pillars, and ceilings intact. Mosaics are on the floors and the walls are covered with frescoes. We wander through the house and imagine how the lady lived. We're in the great entrance room called an atrium. It has an opening in the roof, small draining pool at the center to collect rainwater, and a mosaic floor. It has some fine frescoes on the wall, which seem to expand the size of the room. From the atrium I access Pompeia's private rooms. We see where she had rested and watched the fountains in the shade. I'm walking along a lengthy corridor which ran between the public and the private areas of the house. Along the back of the house are many small alcoves and rooms, which Romans used as sleeping cubicles. This visit leaves a huge impression on me in particular. The villa was built over 2,000 years ago, but looks as our house might look today.
In Sarenta, we're staying at the family hotel Casarufa Paradise, a little paradise on the mountain. It is located over 3,000 feet above sea level and only accessible by either hiking on foot or traveling in a car on a single-lane narrow steep road, which the owner Gianluigi drives at hair-raising speeds. The view is spectacular, and in the evening we're using wine and food from a local store to improvise our dinner. Gianluigi and his wife are very nice hosts, and as we leave, we're taking our pictures together.
Okay.
Okay, you come back next year, maybe?
Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
And
Thank
now
you
this
very
is your
much.
house, okay? No problem.
Positano cannot be described in words. It is a tiny gem of houses and many steps, dotting a hill overlooking a small bay on the Amalfi coast. To reach our hotel, we are going down a long series of steep steps. Finally, we get to our room and our breath stops in our throats. We have a corner room with a 270-degree view, large patio overlooking the town, the bay, and the beach. It is stunning. We're spending 3 glorious days in Positano, marching up and down a lot of stairs. Although the town is full of restaurants overlooking the bay, we think our patio has a better view. What can be more romantic than sitting on the terrace, just the two of us, with a glass of good wine, with darkness descending, lights from the boats, and the Amalfi coastline below lighting up tinkling, and the sea mirroring the stars above. We are in Positano, and it's a very nice little town overlooking the Tyrrhenian Sea, and it's on Amalfi coast. And my wife here says that this is the best, one of the best places she has ever been in her life. We might to argue with that. It is a beautiful thing. On the background you can see, I cannot turn because you wouldn't hear anything. On the background
You can see the sea and the mountains spilling into the sea with the little houses nested upon the mountains. And it's so beautiful.
So is she. It is our second day in Positano, and we're taking a bus over the Corniche to the neighboring town of Amalfi. The view is literally breathtaking, so much so that Maria cannot look down after a couple of rough turns. Town of Amalfi has a large harbor and is similar, but we think not as beautiful as Positano. Because of Maria's experience on the bus, going back, we are taking the sea ferry.
Our next set of ancient rocks is in Paestum. We took a ferry from Positano to Salerno, walked to the railroad station, placed our luggage into storage, and hopped on the train to Paestum. A post on the website says Paestum is a must on any classical tour of Italy. It has some of the best temple remains in Magna, Graecia. It's a haunting archaeological site where 3 Greek temples stand in the middle of the countryside. From the local railroad stop, we're walking through the farm fields and the horse pastures, and then we see the temples. Makes one feel so small in the eternity of things.
After the temples, we took the train from Salerno down the coast to the tip of the boot. It has been 2 beautiful weeks, but also 2 physically taxing weeks. We are tired. 6 hours of non-reclining seats and we got to the clean, non-descriptive hotel in Reggio. A good night's sleep, another visit to the Hertz office, and we are on our way across the Strait of Messina. After a long road through what seems like 100 tunnels, we have arrived in Palermo. We're staying at the 19th century palace-like hotel with very spacious hotel rooms, our only large hotel on this travel. We're spending our time in this 600,000 inhabitant city with very varied architecture and people, reflecting its complex, many-century-old history. Like in the rest of Sicily, Phoenicians, Greeks, Romans, Vandals, Goths, Arabs, Normans, and others all left their imprint on this area. We also visited Palermo's famous Ballaro outdoor market, paradise for people who enjoy food and cooking. The one-day trip from Palermo is to the ancient Greek city of Segesta, founded around 650 BC. The archaeological site has an unusually well-preserved Doric temple. From the top of the town ruins, the temple looks as if it is painted for a fairy tale movie set. Sitting in the ancient Greek theater, one can enjoy the panoramic view and watch a play at the same time. Now Maria is thinking of performing here. We also met Her British Majesty subjects, English, Australian and New Zealand ladies, who are trying to help Maria recite Shakespeare.
What about neither a borrower nor a lender be, for loan oft lose.
Since we had jam-packed schedules, we didn't have time for meals during the day. But the breakfasts were something else, and we indulged with zest. The standard fare includes cappuccino, of course, hard-boiled eggs, cereal and yogurt, different cheese, including goat cheese that's called poor man's cheese, or something like that. Yum, ham, mozzarella, and sometimes prosciutto with different torts, fruits, cookies, and in some places they offered omelets to order. And of course the croissant. Croissant naturel, croissant with jam, croissant with chocolate, and other variations. All freshly baked and full of butter.
From Palermo, we are crossing the island on our way to Agrigento, on the southern coast of Sicily. Sicily is beautiful. Mountains and rolling hills, oaks and cypress trees, olive orchards and lines of vineyards, and of course, beaches and the sea. It is all Sicily. Sicily's most famous Greek site is the Valley of the Temples in Agrigento. The Valley of the Temples is a misnomer. It is actually a walled-in hilltop of the ancient city of Agrigentum. Looking for a hotel in Agrigento, I stumbled on a bed and breakfast called Antica, roughly meaning antique apartments, with the photos of very interesting room interiors. I called the hotel and spoke to the owner. Her name is Giuliana. She said, "We do not need a reservation or a deposit, and that she will hold the room with the sea view for us. I like the young lady. She's an enterprising 29-year-old who studied to be a lawyer, got bored, and convinced her uncle to start a bed and breakfast business with her. They bought a centuries-old building, and she runs it now for a couple of years. She has a delightful personality, and it affects the entire hotel experience. It was Giuliana who recommended two Agrigento restaurants, which were probably our best culinary experience of this trip. Dinner with a view on the 2,500-year-old Greek temple of Concordia. But here is the morning, and we have to say goodbye to Giuliana.
70 centuries, so it's really hot.
It's really old, yeah.
And
it's beautiful.
And I want, I love care about the people, so I chose this place for open bed and breakfast.
And it's wonderful.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Leaving Giulianas Hospitality, we're now on our way to Taormina, a beautiful town on the eastern coast of the island. It has a rich history starting around 7th century BC and is now a very popular upscale tourist destination. The postcard view of Taormina is its Greek theater. Wikipedia says that it's frequently used for operatic and theatrical performances and for concerts. The greater part of the original seat have disappeared, but the back wall of the stage and its appendages have here preserved in singular integrity. The town is so pleasant in its location and spirit, we're forgetting about the tourist crowds. We walk along its old narrow streets, eat dolci, Italian sweets, at the street cafes, and listen to some traditional Sicilian music. A little further on the same street, we also stumble into some nicely performed jazz pieces. Has lovely beaches below, and the view from our hotel terrace is wonderful.
Next afternoon, a ride to Catania Airport, one more visit to our friend Hertz, and a short flight to Rome. Next day is our last day in Rome. My wife and I were very happy here in Italy. We're trying one more time to take in my favorite ancient city. We are on our last late night stroll around the Forum. Tomorrow we are going home. It has been almost a month, and our youngest daughter and our golden retriever in American Naples are missing us by now.